USS Mianatomoh was one of the four Mianatomoh, I'm probably pronouncing both of those wrong, class monitors built for the Union Navy during the American Civil War and was the only one to actually make it into the war. Named after a mountain in southern New Hampshire, the Monitor was laid down in Boston Navy Yard in Charlestown, Massachusetts in 1862, launched on March 23, 1863, and commissioned on October 4, 1864. She then steamed to Norfolk, Virginia, where Commander Enoch Parrott assumed command on the 20th of November. On December 13th, she departed Norfolk to take part in the assault against Fort Fisher. 2 days later, she joined the North Atlantic Blockade Squadron. The reinforced squadron approached Fort Fisher on Christmas Eve as part of the Union fleet. This battle will have its own video, but we'll go through a little bit here. At ranges of 1,100 to 1,200 yards, she bombarded the fortifications and continued throughout the day. She continued shelling Christmas Day as Butler's 2,000 troops landed 3 miles north. The soldiers were withdrawn later that day when Butler heard of approaching Confederate troops and worsening weather. The Navy believed that its fire was accurate and effective. Most of the shells were instead chucked into the Cape Fear River, as the guns had been aimed at the Confederate banner above the fort, and therefore went merrily sailing over the fort and pulverizing the marine life in the river. The second assault began on the morning of January 13, 1865, with the ironclads the first to fire in hopes of provoking Confederate gunners to respond and give away their positions to the rest of the Union fleet. The ironclads anchored to make fire more accurate, and Monadnock kept up slow but deliberate rate of fire during the day and into the night. She was resupplied with ammo at night and kept firing through to the 15th. After Rear Admiral David Porter ordered that his ships were ordered to aim directly at the walls of the fort rather than the flag, this bombardment was far more effective, with many Confederate guns dismounted or disabled. Monadnock's side armor was struck 5 times with little damage. One of her sailors, Quartermaster William Dunn, was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions. She was then ordered to Charleston on the 18th to reinforce the South Atlantic Blockading Squadron, there under the command of Rear Admiral John A. Dahlgren. You probably recognize his name. After the Confederates abandoned Charleston and its surrender on February 18th, the crew took possession of the blockade runner Deer the following day. On the 20th, she entered Charleston Harbor. After a stay in South Carolina, she returned to the Hampton Roads in mid-March, then up the James River to join the James River Flotilla. On March 18th, she was now under the command of Commander William Rockendorf. On April 2nd, she steamed to support the final assault on Richmond and the subsequent clearing of naval mines, returning to the Hampton Roads on the 7th. Monadnock was assigned to Admiral Sylvanus Godin's squadron, which was put together to search for CSS Stonewall, which at the moment was back in Confederate hands. She was delayed by rudder issues and as a result made landfall in Spanish Cuba on May 15th. The squadron left 2 days later and put into Charleston, to recall being enforced by the Monitor Canonicus before continuing to Cuba. They arrived on the 20th of May to find Stonewall now in Spanish hands. Thus, the Monitor's presence was no longer required, and she returned to Virginia and then Philadelphia to prepare for a trip to California. With the close of the Civil War, the Monitor was in preparation for its trip to the Pacific, with 3.5-foot breakwater put on to stop a USS Monitor situation from happening, a tall wooden pilot house over the existing one, and a jury-rigged foremast to add half a knot of speed with its sail. She set sail on October 5th with the USS Vanderbilt, Powhatan, and Tuscarora. She steamed the entire way under her own power, but her fire room getting way too hot caused heat stroke to several of her stokers, and extra pay had to be offered to get people to go down and do that job. After several stops in South America, remember this is before the Panama Canal, she transited the Straits of Magellan and arrived in Valparaiso in late May 1866. Right as the Spanish squadron was preparing to bombard the town, contrary to international law during the Chincha Island War. Commodore John Rogers, commander of the American squadron, attempted to persuade Admiral Castel Mendez Nunez to forego the bombardment, but the latter claimed that it was a point of Spanish honor that he continue. Rogers even had ships cleared for action to attempt, unsuccessfully, to intimidate the Spanish and open fire if a small British squadron in the harbor would join in. They wouldn't, as the British minister in the town forbade British Rear Admiral Joseph Denman to act, and Rogers was forced to stand down. Oh, Spain, if only you knew. Monadnock's arrival at Acapulco coincided with the Mexican siege of the town's French defenders during the Second French Intervention in Mexico. The squadron, probably rather tired of finding themselves potentially in the middle of shooting wars, proceeded to San Francisco and then Vallejo, and finally to Mare Island Navy Yard, where she was decommissioned. 8 years later, her hull was deemed to be far too rotten to work, and she was sold for scrap. Not that Congress knew anything about her being sold for scrap, as they thought it was under repair, mostly because that's what the Navy told them. The Monadnock that we've been talking about thus ceased to exist, and the name was given to another ship. But as far as Congress was concerned, it was the same ship, just a very lengthy repair. Yeah, right. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed that video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.